Annexing zeros when dividing. To avoid a remainder or a fraction in the quotient, I can annex zeros after the decimal point of the dividend. Remember, the dividend is the number that is inside my division house, and then continue to divide. All whole numbers have an understood decimal point after the ones place, or at the end of the number. Now, if you look at the example at the top of page 277, and we're going to be working on this page together, so go ahead and turn your books there. They show you the example 4 into 30, 30 divided by 4. Well, if I were to divide 30 by 4, they show you in the first problem, I get an answer of 7 1/2, because 4 goes into 30 7 times, that gives me 28. There's 2 left over, 2/4, that reduces to 1/2, so it's 7 1/2. Well, I can continue to divide and avoid having that fractional remainder. So they show you 4 into 30 decimal 0. That decimal was already understood to be there, and I'm going to annex a 0, because if I annex zeros at the end of decimal numbers, this only works for decimal numbers, then I've not changed my value. 30.0 is the same thing as 30. Now when I divide it, I have 4 goes into 30 7 times. 7 times 4, 28. I subtract. I have 2 left over. I bring down my 0. Notice how I am not bringing down a decimal point. I'm just bringing down my 0. And now I have 4 into 20. And that goes 5 times. So that goes above that annexed 0 at the top. And 5 times 4 is 20. When I multiply it back through, 20 minus 20 is 0. I have 0 remainder now. You'll see that I've written down the first 6 problems from number 1 on page 277. We're going to work these together. So 2 into 15. Well, the first thing I want to do is annex my 0. So I'm going to put my decimal point at the end of 15 and annex a 0. And look what I'm going to do. I'm just going to extend my division bar from my division house across, so I have a roof across the entire number, 15.0. Now, 2 goes into 15 7 times, and 7 times 2 is 14. And if I subtract, I'm going to have 1 left over. I bring down my annexed 0, and now I have 2 into 10. I need to make sure I put my decimal in my quotient exactly above where it was in my dividend. And now I have 2 into 10 goes 5 times. 5 goes over top of that annex 0. 5 times 2 is 10. Oops, I'm running out of room. And I have nothing left. I can also use my short form of division, and that's what I'm going to use for the rest of these. Okay, so first thing I want to do on B is mark my decimal, which is understood, and then my annexed 0, and continue my division house. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my decimal in my quotient, because I know it's going to go right above where it was in my dividend. Now 4 goes into 5 1 time, and 1 times 4 is 4. When I subtract that from the 5, I'm going to have 1 left over. So my shortcut tells me I can just stick that 1 in front of the next digit. So now 4 into the 18, and that goes 4 times. 4 times 4 is 16. So 18 take away 16 is going to leave me with 2, which I stick in front of my next digit. Now 4 into 20 goes 5 times. So my answer is 14 5/10 for my quotient. On to letter C. First thing I want to do, put in my understood decimal point, annex a 0, continue my division house, put my decimal in my answer, and now 6 into 39. Well, that would go 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. That means I have 3 left over. I just stick that 3 right in front of the next digit, because that was my remainder. So now 6 into 30 is 5. And hopefully you can see that. I'm going to circle that answer. So I'm separating it from the problem above. Okay, on to D. First thing I want to do, stick on my decimal, which is understood at the end of my number, and annex a 0, continue my division house, put my decimal in my answer. 5 into 27 would go 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25, so I'm going to have 2 remainder. I'll put that in front of my next digit. 5 into 20 goes 4 times, and 4 times 5 is 20, so I had 0 remainder. My answer is 5 and 4/10. Letter E. First thing I want to do, put on my decimal. Boy, that was messy. Annex a 0, continue my division house, put my decimal in my answer. 8 goes into 44 5 times, and there's going to be 4 left over, so that 4 goes in front of my next digit. Now 8 into 40 also goes 5 times, and 5 times 8 is 40. There's nothing left over. On to letter F. Start with my decimal, annex my 0, continue my division house, decimal in my answer. 4 can go into 5. So 1 times 4 is 4. I had 1 left over, because 5 minus 4 is 1. Now 4 into 10. Well, that goes twice, and I have 2 left over. So I'm going to stick the 2 in front of my next digit, and 4 goes into 20 5 times. Now, if I wanted to check to make sure that I'm on the right track, I can take my quotient, 12 and 5/10, and multiply it by my divisor, 4. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 2 plus 2 is 10. 4 times 1 plus 1 is 5. And I have 1 decimal place. That means I'm going to count over 1 digit and put my decimal in my answer. And I see that's 50.0. Isn't that what I had here? 50.0. So I'm good. 50.0 is the same thing as 50. Moving on to number 2, still on page 277. And the first thing I want to do is put my decimal, which is understood at the end of my number, and annex a 0, and continue my division house and put a decimal in my answer. Now 4 goes into 37 9 times. 9 times 4 is 36, so that means I have 1 left over. 4 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. Now see, I've got another remainder. What do? I annex another 0. And 2 times 4 was 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. So I'm going to stick that remainder in front of the next annexed 0. 4 into 20 goes 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. I've run out of remainders. I don't have to annex any more zeros. So my answer is 9 and 25/100ths. And this time I had 2 annexed zeros rather than 1. Look at letter B. First thing I want to do, 8 goes into 26, but it'll have a remainder. So I want to put on my decimal, annex a 0, continue my division house, decimal in the answer. 8 goes into 26 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. So I have 2 remainder. Now, 8 goes into 20 2 times. 2 times 8 is 16. I'm going to have another remainder. Therefore, I want to annex another 0, extend my division house. Now, I'm going to put that remainder from 2 times 8 was 16. 20 minus 16 is 4. I'm going to put that with my next annexed 0. 8 goes into 40 5 times, and 5 times 8 is 40. I have no remainder. I'm done. Moving on to C. Decimal, annexed 0, decimal in my answer. 4 into 29 goes 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. That means I have 1 left over. 4 into 10 goes 2 times, but I'm going to have a remainder, so I'm going to go ahead and annex another 0, and I'm going to put that remainder in front of that annexed 0, and 4 goes into 20 5 times. 5 times 4, 20, no remainder, I'm done. Go on to D. Decimal, annex 0, 0 in my answer. 4 into 13 goes 3 times, oops, and 3 times 4 is 12. I have 1 left over. 4 into 11 goes 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. I have 3 left over. So 4 into 30 goes 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. So I'm going to annex a 0 and put that remainder in front of it. Now 4 into 20 is 5. And 5 times 4 is 20. There's no remainder. Letter E. 8 into 75 will not go without having some kind of remainder. So I set myself up with my annexed 0 and decimal. 8 into 75 would go 9 times. 9 times 8 is 72. So that means I had 3 left over. 8 into 30 would go 3 times. I'm going to need to annex a 0. 3 times 8 is 24. That means I had a 6 left. And now I have 8 into 60. And that'll go 7 times. Looky there, I'm going to annex a third 0. 7 times 8 was 56. That meant I had 4 left over from here. So I'm going to put that 4 in front of my next annexed 0. And 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. No remainder. I'm done. On to number 3. Story problems. Last year, during a period of 52 weeks, Mr. Bowman saved $2,444. So what was his average savings each week? Now, to find the average, you already have the total, so you've eliminated the first step of averaging, which is to add up all the different terms. So since we know we've already added it to be 2,444, the only thing left for you to do is to divide by 52 to find the average. So we're not going to do that one. I think you can do that one on your own. Let's go on to B, though. Mr. Bowman, see, this is the same person, so we know we have to use information from A to complete B. Mr. Bowman gave 1/4 of his savings to a missionary and spent half of his savings on a new refrigerator. So how much money does he have left from his year's savings? Well, I can take 1 whole, which is the whole amount of savings, minus the 1/4 that he gave to the missionary, minus the 1/2 that he spent on the refrigerator. So that's the first thing, okay? This is what he spent. So if I add or put together the 1/4 and the 1/2, hopefully you can do this in your head, but that's 3/4. So I'm left with 1 minus 3/4. Now this is the part that I should be doing in my head, okay? Because most story problems have more than one step, and part of that's going to need to be done in my head. I just need to think through it. So if I subtract 3/4 from 1 whole, I'm going to get 1/4. So in other words, he has 1/4 of his savings left. All right, well, how much was his savings to begin with? Because I'm trying to find the dollar amount that he has left in his savings account after he put part of it on a refrigerator and then gave part of it to a missionary. Well, if my total savings, or Mr. Bowman's total savings, was $2,444, then that's where I want to begin. $2,444. And this 1/4 is going to get multiplied by that because he has 1/4 of his savings left, right? Here's his savings. We figured the 1/4 So he has 1/4 of means times his savings left. So when I multiply that 1/4 times 2,444, remember I'm going to put it over 1. I'm going to reduce by 4. That becomes a 1. This becomes 6, 1, 1. And then 1 times 611 is 611 over 1, 611. So he has $611 left in his savings.